Despite the fact that I spent all of November writing my own story and participating in NaNoWriMo, I managed to complete 2 books during the month, which is actually really good because I don't usually read anything when I'm writing my own story. And yeah, I thought I would just do a really casual, laid-back recent reads. The first book that I finished in the month of November was The Graces by Laura Eve. I talked about reading this book a couple of times during the Spookathon, so if you want to hear like the thoughts that I was having when I was like actually in the thick of it, you can go ahead and check that out. So this follows a girl whose name we don't know throughout the book. She has a fake name that she likes to go by, but she and her mother moved into this small town about a year ago. And she has kind of a sketchy backstory that we don't know much of because she doesn't really talk about herself very much. And she feels a little bit neglected at home by her own mother, and she has a hard time making friends. So in this town there is a rumor that surrounds this family called the Graces, which is what the title of the book is. And they are kind of a family that is well known around the town. These Graces family have 3 children that go to the same school as her. One of them is in her class and the other 2 are a year above her. And her goal, her main mission throughout the story is to become the Graces, to be friends with these people and to be in on the inner circle kind of thing. If I were to compare this to other stories, I would say that this is a mixture of the craft and practical magic. So because this is just a recent read, I'm only going to share with you the strengths and weaknesses of this book. If you want to know more of my in-depth, non-spoilery thoughts, I will leave the link to the blog post that I made down in the description bar below, so you can go check that out. But one of the strengths that I found with this book and why I fell in love with it is the writing style. Because this is, as I mentioned, a contemporary character-driven type of book that has slight magical elements to it, the writing style really plays a role because it described everything well. Because we are told this story from the perspective of this character who we don't actually know much about, so everything is kind of interpreted through her lens, and she's not a very reliable character, and I think that's what makes the magical element work. I am someone who likes magical elements that don't need to be explained. I don't need a lot of backstory on how the magic work, and I don't need a lot of explanation on that kind of stuff. So that's kind of a strength for me. If that's not something that you like, then you might not like this book, because things just happen in this book and nothing is explained and you just have to go with it. As for the weaknesses of this book, I would say the plot is what really brought it down for me when it comes to this book, which is interesting because I'm someone who loves character-driven stories with not a lot of plot, but I felt like the characters weren't strong enough to bring this story forward, that it felt like it needed more of a plot. Because I love reading about unreliable narrators, I love reading about unlikable characters. I have nothing against that. I actually prefer that more than likable characters because I find that they're more interesting to read about, but they weren't memorable enough to me that I didn't care about the plot. Because I actually love the idea of the story, because I think this book deals a lot with obsession and unreliable narrators and secrets and gossip and this feeling of loneliness. We feel this loneliness in the main character, and I love reading about that stuff, but it just wasn't strong enough for me. The next book that I picked up is similar to The Graces, but the opposite, where it's considered fantasy, but it has more of a contemporary element to it, and that book is Hunted by Megan Spooner. This is a Beauty and the Beast retelling that I actually was never planning to pick up, because Cruel Beauty by Rosamund Hodge is one of my favorite books of all time. It's one of my favorite Beauty and the Beast retellings, and I didn't want to pick this up because I only know the author as a sci-fi writer, and I thought that this was going to be like a sci-fi Beauty and the Beast, and I wasn't into that. But I started reading it and I really liked the writing style. I would say that this, out of all the other Beauty and the Beast retellings that I've read, I would say that this is the closest to the Disney version, where the storyline is pretty similar. So we have, you know, the main character named Yeva, who moves into the woods with her two sisters and her father, and then her father goes missing, and then she goes out to find her dad, only to find out that she gets kidnapped by the Beast, and she finds out this whole magical world that the Beast lives in. Where the strengths of this book lie for me would have to be the writing style. I really love the way it's written. It's very simplistic but atmospheric and magical at the same time. I keep saying this, but this is the closest to the Disney Beauty and the Beast that it could possibly get, because the way it's written is very whimsical but not too much that it takes away from the story, and it's very atmospheric because it takes place in like medieval Russia, I think, so it has that like wintry vibe to it. And also the characters resemble the cartoon characters from the Disney version very well. I thought that the Beast especially was described the way that you see the Beast described in the Disney version. The other strength that I would say that this book has is the overall message, because again, I did a blog post of this if you want to hear more coherent thoughts. These are just like dot points that I have, but I like that it didn't really stray too far away from the original, but it kind of looked at the story from a different lens. So like the original is, as much as they want to say that it's about empowerment and whatever, it's a romance, right? This is a romance, and it ends up, you know, as a romance in the end, if you know the story of the Beauty and the Beast. But it kind of has this slight tone where it's more about the main character and more about her goals and her motivations. The weakness of this book, I would say, would be the characters, more specifically the Beast, because we didn't get much of him. Like we barely got anything from his past. We didn't get enough of his character. He was kind of just like a blank slate for me, and I think that's why this wasn't as high up there with the other Beauty and the Beast retellings that I've read, because I didn't feel connected to any of the characters. Anyway, that is all from me today. Please let me know your thoughts if you read this book, if you want to read this book, and again, I will leave my in-depth, non-spoilery blog post of these two books down in the description bar below, because it's been a while since I actually picked these up, so I probably didn't say everything that I wanted to say about this book. But yeah, I hope you're having a great day, and you will see me in another video soon.